everyone. Welcome to the Thursday and final show. Most likely, this is the final show. We don't know what's going on. UCY is kind of shutting things down, maybe. So I'm playing this funereal music in case this is the last show. Yeah, so I don't know what's going to happen. Either way, even if this is the last show on this platform, it will not be... Okay, I'm going to turn off Tom York now. It's obviously not the end of anti-media radio. Well, be the end of the radio part, but we'll start a podcast. Nick is going to start a podcast for sure, but I doubt I'll be hosting one. So, as far as me hosting, this is very likely my last anti-media show that I will host. However, I will be starting my own podcast soon enough for my site, The Ghost Diaries, which is, all things paranormal and fringe. And that should be fun. But yeah, so I don't know. Times are changing, things change. Definitely been a rough patch here for anti-media itself. First with the kind of algorithmic censorship that is essentially the government passing along censorship to social networks. So you have things like Google AdSense restricting how much money alternative news networks can get. You have Facebook restricting the page reach of news they consider to be fake, which is just weird. I mean, it's let people read what they want. Are we really at the point now where the government is going to, and the corporations are going to start curating our truth for us? In the 90s and earlier, we walked to the grocery store and we stood in line, and while we stood in line to buy our groceries, there were tabloids, the National Enquirer, things like that, with very sensational headlines. Things like Bill Clinton's, alien baby, or something like that. And people mostly knew it was fake. Some people will believe anything. But now I guess they feel that because social media has such of a reach, they have to intervene. I disagree. I think it's pretty wrong. But at this point, it's par for the course, and we don't know what's going to happen. But it has very dramatically affected anti-media. And so it'll be interesting to see how things shake out in the near future here. But hopefully we're going to be joined by DB tonight. I haven't heard from him, and I just got back from a trip, so I've kind of been out of contact, and I am incredibly tired. So I certainly hope DB joins us. Also, because it's kind of like the last show. I'm sure he'll join in. Any second now, he'll interrupt me with some QAnon theory. So yeah, no specific focus tonight. Just got back from Los Angeles, did a little sleuthing there, and talked to some bodyguards, talked to a private investigator, still working on my case, and working on my book. Kind of a slow news week. There's not a whole lot going on. But one thing that I think is very interesting is these new sonic attacks. And now this started a few weeks ago in Cuba. There were about 20 State Department employees who had various neurological symptoms from what they're calling sonic attacks. Okay, now that same thing is happening at the U.S. consulate in China. So what is a sonic attack? Well, they're not really too specific about it, but you know, it could very well turn out to be that this is a new form of weaponry. And, you know, we know that the government, DARPA, the military research wing of the State Department of the government, is very far ahead of the private sector. So it stands to reason they would have some pretty advanced tools and weapons. And we could be seeing a rollout here of some different kinds of weapons. Now, what's interesting about this report is that this sounds like the thing you would usually hear in a conspiracy rag. Sonic attacks, electronic weaponry, which is really what this sounds like to me, is electronic signals sent in to disrupt people. This is usually the thing that conspiracy theorists talk about. And this is coming out in the mainstream news. And I think this is really kind of a psyop to basically admit that these kinds of weapons are out there and that they're going to start using them. And if they're using them on diplomats, you can damn well rest assured they're sure as shit using them on us. We just don't know how yet. But we're pretty sure that they can do a moderate level of mind control with electronic frequencies. You know, it's still not very well proven yet, but you know, it's just an interesting story. I mean, it's really the kind of thing that you would normally see in a conspiracy theory site. And, you know, it happens at the same time as, you know, the relations between U.S. and China are very, you know, tense over, you know, possible trade war, ongoing kind of almost basically an arms race over artificial intelligence. And it'll be interesting to see, you know, how this shakes out. I mean, I don't know, it's just kind of weird. But yeah, Americans have evacuated the U.S. consulate in China after mysterious sonic attacks. We don't even know what a sonic attack is, really. Other things in the news here. Billions in U.S. solar projects are shelved after Trump imposed tariffs. So that's not good. 30% tariff on imported panel materials. So the U.S. clean energy developers have shelved more than $2.5 billion in solar projects. And that's, of course, costing jobs. So, you know, Trump is, you know, very gung-ho about jobs, but only if it's for the industry players that he's wedded to, you know, if it's solar power. I don't understand it. I mean, they're so determined to not make us independent of fossil fuels. It's just like they're just milking the rest of these billions of dollars out of the rest of the fossil fuels, which, lead to war, lead to uh, environmental damage. There's like nothing good about it. Except, I mean, it has fueled the world, but it's time for us to transition now into a new world. What else? Hmm. Pentagon admits no one will ever know how many civilians were killed. How many civilians the U.S. killed fighting ISIS. I mean, this is just one of the just barbaric news stories of the century, really, is how many people we've killed in the Middle East because of the war on terror. I mean, the last count I saw was the war on terror had officially surpassed Vietnam in terms of loss of civilian life or overall life, which is pretty incredible if you think about it. We think of Vietnam as this great vacuum, this great mistake, but we just repeated that same mistake over the last 15 years. Good. So this was just published. It's an op-ed. We're still waiting for evidence of a Russian hack. More than 2 years after the allegation of a Russian hack of the 2016 presidential election, conclusive proof is still lacking and may never be produced. Yeah, it's our media would rather focus on a Russian leak than the information that was actually leaked. 6 weeks before the Democratic National Convention, Assange announced the pending publication of emails related to Hillary Clinton, throwing the Clinton campaign into panic mode, since the emails would document a strong bias in favor of Clinton and successful attempts to sabotage the campaign of Bernie Sanders. When the emails were published just 3 days before the convention began, the campaign decided what I call a magnificent diversion, drawing attention away from the substance of the emails by blaming Russia for their release. And that's pretty much what happened. This article was written by Ray McGovern. And yeah, I mean, it's just, and the irony is that Trump just made Pompeo Secretary of State, and Pompeo hates Assange. So, I mean, Assange, whether purposely or not, basically helped Trump get elected. And Trump's not repaying the favor. I mean, I don't. I mean, Assange is. There's a lot of problems with what Assange has done recently, but the man does not deserve to be sitting in a Ecuadorian room, trapped in a room. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what goes on with this Mueller investigation, because as this article states, the independent investigators supposedly found verifiable evidence from metadata found in the record of an alleged Russian hack of July 5th, 2016, showing that the hack that day of the DNC by Lucifer 2.0 was not a hack by Russia or anyone else. Rather, it originated with a copy onto an external storage device by an insider, the same process used by the DNC insider leaker before June 12th for an altogether different purpose. Once the metadata was found and the fluid dynamics principle of physics applied, this was not difficult to disprove the validity of the claim that... Oh, okay, I don't know what he's saying anymore, but... Basically, we still don't have verifiable proof that Russia hacked the elections. Now, did they help release information? Maybe. Perhaps. Most likely. I guess we're not going to have DB tonight. MIA on the last show, man. I might just fall asleep right here on the air. No, I won't. I'll stay awake. What else we got? So, anti-media publishing today. Here's something interesting. The political significance of LSD. Microdosing on psychedelic substances like LSD, which is to say ingesting just enough to heighten cognitive faculties, enhance creativity, improve concentration, and alleviate depression, is currently back in vogue among people not normally associated with anything remotely countercultural. So microdosing is kind of this new movement. In fact, there's a lot of research coming out saying that psilocybin, or the active ingredient, psychoactive ingredient in mushrooms, psychedelic mushrooms, can help with depression. Now, I've been doing a lot of research on depression for this thing I'm writing, and it's a pretty complex issue. I mean, there's so many different causes for it. There's biological causes, there's genetic causes, there's psychosocial causes, trauma. There's a lot of reasons why people develop depression. And there should be a lot of ways that we can treat it too. And unfortunately, because the government has criminalized psychedelics, we can't research it. It's very difficult for researchers to basically get permission to do research on psychedelics, because they're particularly the ones that are Schedule 1. So, and that's just, it's bullshit. Like, people shouldn't be spending their lives in prison for a psychedelic. Especially when these psychedelics could help people. It's just so backwards. Everything is so damn backwards. I don't get it. I mean, really, does it make any sense for mushrooms to be illegal? Does it make any sense for LSD to be illegal? Why? It's very clear the reasons why they're illegal. They're illegal because they expand our minds and make us question the social paradigm we're in. And that came about, largely in the 60s. I mean, that was when the big Timothy Leary movement came about. And the government was terrified that basically they were going to lose control of society. In reality, what they did is they created such a draconian system. I think we might have DB joining us. And created such a draconian system that they are the ones that have lost control of society because so few people trust the government now. We have so many people who are wasting away in prisons. We have this police state where drugs are criminalized and where people that have really not committed a crime. I don't consider doing drugs a crime. I just don't. And I never will. Now, you get into something like heroin, okay, that's problematic. Cocaine, problematic.
Hello.
DB, how you doing? I'm talking about LSD.
Well, damn.
Yeah, last show I figured we got to talk about LSD.
Yeah, sorry I'm late, man.
Oh, no worries. So they just released this new study talking about microdosing and all this new research that shows that, well, psilocybin at least in mushrooms can treat alcohol addiction and depression. And it's something we've talked about many times before, but it's very clear the reason why psychedelics are illegal or criminalized. They threaten social stability because they make us, think outside of the traditional social paradigm, make us question the government, question groupthink, and all kinds of propaganda. It'll be interesting to see, and it's impossible for researchers, very difficult for researchers to study mushrooms and LSD because they're illegal. And it's a problem.
Yeah, I think we're starting to find that everything that's so-called mind-altering is actually mind-expanding, and they don't want that.
Of course not. No, they don't even want marijuana, legalized, which is just vastly safer than alcohol or Red Bull or cigarettes or any of the drugs that are regularly marketed to us and quite legal. It's just so it's just blatant police state propaganda, basically, that these things are illegal, and they made it seem like it's the norm. A lot of people don't even question it anymore. I think it's absurd that LSD is illegal. It's absurd that people are sitting in prison for the rest of their lives right now for selling
everything we were founded on is basically skewed and deformed at this point. All the good things that made the promise of America amazing, they've eroded into the same shit you see everywhere else in the world. And I mean, we still have the second, so it's never too late while we have the second. I know people go, "Oh, what are you gonna do? Fight the military?" Yeah, it's been done, I don't know, like 1,000,000 times. So yeah, people die every freaking day for no reason. At least you could die to try to become free. I mean, that to me, it just shows the pure cowardice we have in this country, dude. And it's like, it really is. We're a laughing stock, dude. We use drones to fight our wars. We don't look people in the eye anymore when we kill them. I mean, we are the new evil empire, and if we're not going to take it back, man, why shouldn't they crush the population down? They're planning on it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think most people are so defeated and propagandized, and they're so docile now. I mean, they've spent trillions of dollars and decades of social grooming and propaganda and groupthink and trauma, basically directed trauma against us, against the citizens, to put us in this place where we're scared to stand up for our basic rights. We're dependent on the government. We're dependent on corporations. We're not self-reliant. We wouldn't have the faintest clue what to do if the grid went down. And so people are scared and they're dependent. And it's basically almost Pavlovian response. They kind of trained us like rats in a cage almost.
Yeah, I mean, well, I stopped thinking about things from a conspiratorial bent because it gets you nowhere. You just need to understand the world's run by money and business, and that's all it is. There's some really sick, degenerated people in charge that are put there specifically because they're blackmailed. They have zero competency or talent for governorship. They're just leaders. They're almost always bloodline related to somebody higher up in the machinations. You know, you look at Zygmunt Brzezinski and his daughter on Morning Joe. I mean, she's awful. So these people that are in positions of power are there because of their daddy and mommy and what they're willing to do to stay there, which is basically anything. And we can't trust him. And not only that, you got to start looking around at your fellow Americans and stop trusting them when they believe these people. These people around you, at this point, if you can't wake up from what you've seen, you're a threat to me. Like, I'm starting to see my neighbors as threats. If food and water run out, I'm going to have to fight them because they're not going to understand what's going on. They're going to panic. They're not going to believe what's happening. And they're going to get violent when they run out of supplies, dude. And it's like every big city is going to be like that. So I don't know what's in store for our future, but you're right. We're completely dependent on something that's 1880s tech, which is running electrical wire through telephone or through poles, dude. We haven't even buried our grid, let alone modernized it or shielded it. So it wouldn't even take an EMP. A bad earthquake, Mount St. Helens erupting, Yellowstone erupting, enough things happening to enough power plants would fracture the grid and destroy it, because it's, believe it or not, I think there's only 5 grids in the US, Jake. I think it's like the East Coast, the Midwest, West, they're all tied in because the infrastructure's ancient. So yeah, I mean, we're a lobster in a very slowly boiling pot, and the it's boiling now. So like, if you don't smell yourself burning, like, I'm not sure what it's going to take for you. And that is the scariest shit to me, Jake. I don't have a nightmare of tanks rolling down the streets or drones bombing my house. My nightmare is that there's going to be roving bands of regular dumb fuck Americans who are armed, killing people to take their food and water because the grid went down.
Interesting. I like that metaphor of the lobster boiling water, and something tells me they've drawn fresh butter and lemon as well.
Well, yeah, man. I mean, look at these last elections. If it didn't tell you it was a circus, they told the people, not only do you not matter, but fuck you. That's what this last election was about. And then they're going to use it as a pretense to ram in their whole global agenda, because guess what? Anti-Trump equals globalist agenda. They've really made it quite that simple. I mean, look at all these celebrities, what they tout, their values, and the people that are super against Trump. The people who are super against Trump are sick, degenerate fucks, dude. I'm sorry. They are all to a T. So you can trust Trump, you can trust them, or you can actually just trust your common sense and know these people are playing you and playing everyone around you, and they want to start a civil war.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily think everyone is a sick fuck, but there clearly are some very...
The most vocal ones are very, very dubious, though.
Well, I think a lot of them aren't even aware of what they're saying. I think I think a lot of them think, like some of these celebrity liberals, I think they think they're part of the zeitgeist, that civil liberties and social justice are all that matter. And I think they've overlooked a very sinister part of our history for the last at least 50 to 100 years that goes beyond social justice. And I mean, it really goes to the heart of who we are as an empire. And yeah, I definitely agree with you, though, that they are setting up a very scary dichotomy of it's setting up for some kind of civil war where you're going to have to pick a side, and people are going to be very driven to support their side. And yeah, like, I've traditionally believed in liberal values, but I definitely don't like this over dependence on government, because I don't think that the people running it are very competent, and I don't really think they have our best interest at heart. I think most of them are bilking corporations through lobbyists to get money. Some of them have good intentions, I think, but Washington is the place where ideals go to die, and these people that may have had good intentions at one point, they're really, they don't know what the hell they're talking about anymore, and it's just representative democracy does not work right now. I don't know if it.
Well, because people are so damn dumb, dude. They're just so uneducated about anything.
Yeah.
I mean, the average American can barely perform their profession competently. They don't have any kind of Renaissance man aspirations. They didn't learn how to do math and art. I mean, people are just stupid as fuck, dude. So I don't know what we can do to fix it. I think it's getting worse. I think the newer generations are even dumber and less capable of doing anything. If the grid were to go down, they'd probably just eat it.
And the new generations are even more dependent on technology. I mean, a lot of these kids growing up right now, if you took their smartphones away from them, they'd have complete and total meltdowns.
Well, they do. I mean, I've seen temper tantrums when people take away the iPad from a 4-year-old. And it's pathetic, man. It really is. It shows that you're a shitty parent. You need to go to a parenting class. You probably shouldn't have had kids if you didn't want to raise them. And fuck you. It's our last show. I'm going to drop the F-bomb.
To it, man. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, this is ostensibly the last show. I mean, I think even UCY may Nick told me that UCY may stay on. We don't know for sure. But even if UCY goes down, we'll have a podcast. We'll be doing a podcast. But this could be the last one where it's just me and you. However, I'm going to start that Ghost Diaries podcast, and if you're down, that'll be me and you, and we'll get even more fringe on that one.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, dude, like, I hold back, and I have a lot of fucking crazy ideas, but the thing is, there's really
I didn't
no
know that, DB.
yeah, but there's really no purpose to that if we're not going to implement anything. I mean, I've been wanting to get off grid and go do a little farm, and the more I get pulled into what I'm doing for work now, the more I realize I can't do that and do that.
Yeah.
It's kind of one or the other. I mean, you can do your job on a farm. I can't. A lot of people can't. We want to unplug and maybe move to a micro community with a bunch of awesome people, and the U.S. certainly has the land and the environment to support those micro communities, especially with technology making off-grid possible. So I think our future's bright, but we're going to have an extremely rough patch because we have to have some kind of a reset. You cannot continue to quantitative ease ad infinitum ad infinitum and keep decreasing buying power for the average American to where it's at now. I mean, that's why they're so insistent on removing the second. If people don't get that by now, I cannot probably drill it into you. The Second Amendment's being attacked right now because we are broke. We're so broke that if we actually were adjusted to the quantitative easing we've been doing, every dollar you have would become 50 cents. That's how broke we are. Are you okay with that? Are you going to sit at home when they take half of your money out of your bank account, or are you going to go out on the streets and try to do some shit? And they're anticipating the latter. I mean, they are prepping for martial law, dude.
I think, truth. I mean, an economic collapse from that point of view is possible. It's also simply possible that, as we've talked about many times, just the influx of automation and new disruptive technologies is going to send so many people out of the job market. There's already a lot of people barely holding on to jobs. When 50 to 60 to 70% of these jobs are flushed away because an AI can do them 100 times better and cheaper, a lot of people are simply not going to have an income. They're going to have to implement a universal basic income. There's going to be a lot of social unrest about that because people do not like the government just handing money out to people, but there's going to be people that need it. A lot of the people currently bitching about welfare are going to need a universal basic income. Probably within the next 20 years. It's going to be, dude, talk about a lobster in a boiling pot. That's what we're in right now in terms of this automation situation. The next 20 years are going to be fucking insane. And we need new energy grid options, and hopefully blockchain will be able to help us help people organize in communities. That's what we were talking about last night. And I really think that that's what's needed right now. Is, I'm reading this giant book on depression actually right now, and it's talking about the evolutionary mechanism of depression and how we may not really have been built for the kind of society we're in right now, psychologically. Like we would be happier. Basically, hunter-gatherer societies have significantly less depression across the world throughout history. The manner of, and I'm not saying we need to go back to a hunter-gatherer situation, but these mega cities we're living in with these completely disenfranchised jobs, disenfranchised lives, everything's mediated for us, everything's curated, our food is flown in from 1,000 miles away. We are so disconnected from the raw pulse of life on Earth that we're all just screwed up in the head, and that's where all these mental illnesses are probably coming from. And God, I mean, all we can hope for is that there will be some kind of hard reset, and hopefully it'll be a peaceful one. Hopefully, maybe there'll be some evolution of consciousness. Probably not, but sometime in the next 100 years, we have to learn to, one, be better stewards of the earth. It's because all of this shit we're doing, all this pollution and environmental damage, this is just bad karma for us, dude. The earth hates us right now. We talk about America being the evil empire. Humans are the evil occupying force of the earth. Now, I know that sounds a little juvenile, and I think people are trying their hardest, and most people are pretty good at hard, but I don't think I don't think humans were prepared for consciousness in this level of a civilization. There's just so much confusion and sadness and despondency and poverty, and this is just not the world that we want. And it seems like some elements are pushing towards recovery, but man, I mean, talk about dystopia. I mean, who could have predicted this is the world we're going to live in? Good God. I don't know, man. It's the last show, so we might as well get.
It's getting bad, yeah. But there's always solutions. It's just if people are willing to do what's necessary. I mean, throughout history, I think calamities have been either caused or avoided by people either willing or being unwilling to do what was necessary. I mean.
But I'm not sure that I'm not sure that an armed uprising would help anything right now, man. Like
No, we're not at that point yet.
Yeah,
but you can see the writing on the wall. I mean, how bad does it have to get? And does anybody stop to think why they're letting in people from other parts of the world where it's so fucking shitty? Do you not understand what they're doing? They're creating a new, basically, citizenry that doesn't give a fuck how bad it gets because it's better than their shitty place. I talk to people every day that move here, and they are kissing the ground, dude. They have no idea how bad it's gotten since we were kids, dude. And that's the whole goal. They think the police brutality is normal. They think these taxes are normal and the shitty food supply is normal and all the chemtrails are normal. All that's not normal, dude. That's been since Clinton got in for the most part, and a little bit started with Bush. So the agenda started in the early 90s. They went through with this UN Agenda 21. They got pushed back now to 2030. 2030 is in full swing. It's actually now 2040. And I went to some city planning up here in the cities, and they're going to push everybody into the inner core, slam them into this, I'm talking about like 500 square feet apartments right off the light rail. So the worker bees and drones can go to work, go to their second job, and come home and die. I mean, that's where we're at, dude. And these are people
isn't that already where we're at?
No, we're not even close, because the regular people in this country still could buy a house, still can get a good job. But that shit is disappearing rapidly. They are bringing in people that'll work for peanuts with better degrees than you. They're not helping you with your college or your health care, and they're taking 50% of everything you make.
So what does it take? So you're just talking about immigrants at this point?
Listen, man, there's nothing wrong with immigrants. The problem is our country and our government are doing them wrong. And us at the same time. All right? No other country in the world do they not vet. They just do a lottery. Obama put a lottery in. That's the most asinine bullshit I've ever heard. We're going to randomly let people in. How many people really think that shit was random? You have to be an idiot. All right? There's sleeper cells all over. They were planning on taking over from the inside, and for whatever reason, a decision was made for that to stop. And there's a lady that writes the Solari report. I can't remember. Catherine Fitz. She was on a show with Rents, and Rents is, of course, you got to take him with a major grain of salt, maybe a mountain of salt. But she's legit. She's basically somebody that does modeling for financing around the world. She pretty much said, listen, a decision was made. Like, there's a couple empires, maybe 3 or 4 empires in the world. And we're in expansion mode. We're in the Middle East. We're in Asia. We're probably in Antarctica. We're everywhere. All right. The problem is we overextended. We overextended ourselves, and we were infiltrated by other groups, and we were gonna lose, dude. We were gonna lose our ass. So I think the military realized this, and I think they kind of went with the scorched earth doctrine. I think that's what's on the horizon. That, well, if everybody in the whole world is looking like an enemy, let's just fight everybody. I'm serious about them thinking they can fight Russia and China at the same time, and anybody else. They don't give a shit, dude. They'll drop 500 of those robots off on a Globemaster, dump them off in parachutes, and let them decimate a whole human army. I mean, we're at that point, dude. We're at the Terminator, laser beams, fucking missiles from space, Solar Warden point. It's just everybody down here doesn't see it because they're chemtrailed and vaccinated and Kardashian to death, and they're a living zombie. And that's what it is, dude.
Wouldn't that contravene globalism, though? If we go to World War, I mean, how can they?
That's what I'm saying. A decision was made that globalism was being fought too hard by people that were conscious. So why not just start a huge war and start over, wipe everyone out?
So you think right now we're headed towards a World War III?
Absolutely. Because think about it. Our infrastructure is completely decayed in the U.S. We have plenty of money to fix it. The reason they're not doing it is because they expect it to get wiped clean.
Dude, I have wondered about that. Like, I swear to God, every major city I've lived in for the last 15 years has had the most effed up roads I have ever seen in my life. Like, it's absurd how screwed up the roads are everywhere. Portland, San Diego, Los Angeles.
Yeah, a mile under the ground, they can take a tube train from Denver to Washington, D.C. in an hour.
Yeah, now that would make sense to me if they weren't fixing it up just because, what's the point? We're going to have some kind of hard...
And everything's going underground, Jake. Everything is going to build these mega luxury cities that run on these fucking salt reactors that basically feed off the Earth's mineral content. They're like nuclear reactors that use the crust, essentially. They never run out. They can stay down there for hundreds and hundreds of years.
So you think AI will be able to save us from this, global war?
It's going to be used to fight, and that's why it was.
Well, I know. Well, Google was basically making the AI drones for the military-industrial complex. Yeah. Until just very recently, so many employees protested that they reversed course. But
Google is just Alphabet, so we have to make sure Alphabet didn't just open a subsidiary and continue that work.
Oh, that's assuredly what's happening. Like, there's so much money tied up in that. Of course, that's what they're doing. They're just doing a PR move, and they never would have even brought it up if the Intercept hadn't broken that. The Intercept completely...
It's just bad news, man. I mean, think about it, dude. How could Paperclip have happened if some Jews were in cahoots with the Nazis? Once you wrap your mind around that and realize that the propaganda of the Holocaust is just that, and I'm a Jew, all right? And I understand what fucking happened. Zionist Jews killed the people that were Jewish that didn't want to go along with the formation of Israel. That's the entire fucking reason World War II happened. People don't understand. They don't read history. They don't understand that Judea declared war on Germany in 1933. That would be like if Islam declared war on America right now. Could you imagine what would happen? World War III. So that's what they're building up, man. They're weaponizing Islam. They were pumping weapons to places like Iran and North Korea, advanced nukes so that they would nuke us. I mean, this is some heinous shit, dude, and it's been broken up or delayed or maybe brought out from behind the curtains. And again, I have to say, if we're not going to have a world war, we're going to have a civil war. One or the other, dude. If we're not uniting against a common enemy, there's so much fucking hate in this country, dude. I see it every day. I mean, people hate each other here.
Yeah.
It could be Trump. It could be because Obama was such a sack of shit for 8 years. It could be a lot of things. It could be because Clinton made 3 strikes and took away all the black fathers. It could be a lot of fucked up shit. The thing is, our country's messed up because the Masons run it, and they hate people. They hate you. They hate you. They think you're a piece of crap if you're not blue blood. You're nothing. That's as easy as it is, dude. George Washington was a Mason, and he founded the country. So there you go.
Yeah, man, you're red pilling the shit out of us today, man.
Because it's sick, sad, disgusting, pathetic, depressing to be around this all the fucking time, dude.
Yeah.
And you meet one conscious person, and you're like, you're my best friend. We're in a sea of zombies.
Yeah, I mean, I can see some of it. I mean, in general, like I have trouble. You know, I don't like to believe every conspiracy because I just don't. You know, like there's basically we live in an ahistorical time. I don't think we can have an objective view of history because history is
totally right.
And I don't think we can possibly know what's currently going on.
I mean, you can know history, but you'd have to look. You can't just let it come to you Wikipedia style or use Snopes or you know, in the age of instant everything information, people now rely on trusted sources. It's the most asinine thing I've ever heard of. It's like the blue check mark next to the name means that person's opinion matters. It doesn't. They're fake. You're fake. You're living a fake life.
I agree with that. I mean, there's definitely a concerted effort right now to tell people whose version of history and truth to read. You know, that's happening all across the internet right now, and yeah, it's dangerous. I mean,
where's the best place in the world to live right now? It should be real easy to answer that.
I've only lived in one place, so I don't know.
Well, from your research, because you're a very well-read guy and you watch stuff all the time, where do you think the highest quality of life and standard of living is right now?
Well, I would say the countries that...
But it's one country in particular that's heads above everybody. I mean, by a lot. So the average American citizen has a GDP of about $47,000 right now. And in Japan, that's 110.
Ah, Japan.
Okay?
Huh?
So when you have more than twice as much buying power, you have twice as good of a life or more. And you get everything provided by the government, including your health care and college, and there's no crime. And they won, dude. They won. All right? They won World War II. They run the whole world. Nobody knows it because everybody's bought into propaganda. We do anything they say. Anything. We went over to Korea because they wanted it. And there's nothing we can do about it because they won. I mean, our Marines cleaned up the cities we nuked. 100,000 Marines died from radiation poisoning. U.S. Marines. I mean,
so if they won,
you don't rebuild the cities of a country that you conquered. You rebuild those cities under the peace agreement in '53. That's how long it took. We were still fighting. Actually, after World War II ended, on behalf of Japan, we fought China and North Korea because they wanted to stick it to them even more and made us do it. So that's the world you live in right now. You live in a world that you think it's Russia, China, and us, and we're all at the pleasure of Japan. Japan's actually still officially at war with Russia, believe it or not. They never signed a peace treaty. So it's a very different dynamic than you can possibly imagine. We're not on top. China's not on top. They'll never be on top. Russia sure as fuck will never be on top. And everybody's 50 to 100 to 1,000 years behind Japan, where the only thing that matters, which is AI. So there you go, dude. When you create AI like 20 years ahead of everyone else, it's over. It's over, dude. They've had everything running autonomously on perfect algorithms for our entire lives, me and you.
Let's see.
So,
yeah, you've been talking about Japan for a while, man. I didn't realize they were so far ahead in AI.
they're so far ahead in anything non-military because they don't need to invest anymore because we're their bitch. We're their military. I mean, once people's dynamic and their brain shifts, and you understand that, and you understand that 70% of our debt is owned by them, I mean, China's 20% is nothing. You know, so they tell us what to do. Their economy is, like I said, per capita 110 grand a year. You think you could live well on that? You think their citizens are fucking happy? I mean, didn't Hirohito's heir just take over his fourth in line now? So this is the longest dynasty that's ever ruled by far. It's still the same family ruling.
So this
they do it at the.
So this article is saying that not just Japan but also Israel has emerged as a major contender in the AI race.
Yeah, they're probably a second to Japan, but Japan's just got what, like 150 million, 140 million people. I mean, you can't compete with 7 million citizens. So
hey, check this out: a robot is going to run for mayor in Japan.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll win.
Japan.
Why not, dude? I mean,
Fortune.com says Japan, a haven for humanoid robots. Tim Cook's Japan visit could result in superior Apple AI. Yeah, I don't know. You're probably right on this one, actually. Damn, I didn't know. I didn't realize Japan was so far ahead.
But it's, you know, it's symbiotic. They don't exist without us. We're their raw manpower and their materials and resource base. So we're kind of a dual intertwined empire in that way. Like the West, a lot of people don't consider Japan part of the West, but it is.
Right.
Japan was the only country in Asia that accepted the Romans, and the Romans bred with Japanese people, and that's why Japanese people are the only Asians that really have a lot of body hair, because they got a lot of Roman blood intertwined back in the day. So their banking system is central and it's intertwined with the Rothschild interests, and they are the West. I know it sounds crazy, but they really are. I don't know who's in the top position, but my guess is that Japan can tell the Rothschilds what to do. But I think that that's a tug of war back and forth. And
yeah, I think that's kind of what's going on. I mean, I do think I do believe in a kind of new world order. I mean, I do think that there are groups that are controlling the large end of what's going on. But you know, as we've talked about before, I mean, I don't think they agree on everything.
No, I mean, because our cultures are so different, our philosophy and way of looking at life. Where Japan still to this day, it's very prevalent to worship ancestors and natural gods. Not these satanic fucking forces, but I mean they do worship, like, you know, gods of the ocean, gods of the air, and supposedly they have real power because a couple times Russia tried to, well, once the Mongol horde tried to come over, and then the Russians tried to come over in World War II, and both times, like, once a century storm sank like their entire fleets, and they never even made landfall. So, I mean, that alone is just like, what? So, yeah, I mean, yeah, they got nuked. I guess there's no way you can pray to God to stop nukes from falling on you. But I think they're kind of at the epicenter of it all, dude. Tech, spiritual, industry. They just simply lack resources, raw resources, which is where we come in. And which is why we go and requisition those resources, not only for us but their companies as well. So
Interesting stuff, man. Well, we're coming up against the end here. I guess Well,
all things come to an end.
yeah,
UCY was a great platform, and shout out to Jules for all her hard work
yeah.
the whole
Seriously, I
time.
mean, if this really is the end of ECY, you got to hand it to Jules. She did a great job, and this is a great platform for alternative media. And it's a shame. It'll be a shame if it goes away, because this is already such a tenuous time for alternative media. But hey man, it's been a blast hosting this thing with you, man. I mean, I hope that we migrate to another platform with this. Uh,
Yeah, there's still more to say, but I mean, yeah, I mean, honestly, Anti-Media's webpage ought to have a little studio in the top right where we could have, not just me, you, and Nick, but I mean, all the people that are involved should potentially be able to just upload or live stream podcasts up in a little player right on the webpage, and we could just have a set schedule or not. I mean, it doesn't have to stop. Nick's got the website up, and the reach is
yeah.
still out there. So
Well, I would frankly, I'm hoping that with a podcast that we can actually have callers again. I wanted callers the entire time. And I think that'd be
yeah, it'd
I
be
think
a bit
that'd
of
be
an evolution there.
that'd be a lot more fun. I'll tell you that.
Yeah,
It'd be interesting as hell to have other people calling in and arguing with us or agreeing with us. I mean, that's what I hope we can do. I'm gonna petition Nick pretty hard for that, but either way, man. I mean, it's been a journey, dude. It was a blessing. It's a blessing having you as a friend, man. And it's
ditto, dude. And you need to come out here at some point.
I know that's gonna happen at some point. Well, that's it for now, folks. Keep up with us on Anti-Media and look
The
for
name won't change, so you can find us easy, right?
keep up with us. Find out where we're gonna be next.
Go and let it blow,
Now,
blow through
now,
the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo. This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo.